In the photograph, two men stand with heads bowed and fists raised, a silent thunderclap that echoed around the world. Between them, a third man stands still, his hands by his sides, face solemn. Many never noticed him. To most, he was just the white guy in the picture. But this man, Peter Norman, was no bystander to history. He was a quiet rebel. And this is the story of how his country turned its back on him. Australia in the 1960s was a nation clinging to its whiteness. Under the White Australia policy, non-European immigrants were barred, indigenous rights ignored, and racial inequality institutionalized. It was a time of pride and of silence. Half a world away, America was burning with change. From Selma to Oakland, black voices demanded dignity, justice, and equality. And within that fire, a movement was born. The Olympic Project for Human Rights, an alliance of athletes who vowed to stand or kneel for something greater. Peter Norman was a teacher, a devout Christian, and one of the fastest men alive. A quiet man with a fierce sense of fairness, raised in a nation where speaking out was frowned upon, especially by someone who looked like him. At the 1968 Mexico City Olympics, Norman ran the race of his life, finishing second in the 200-meter final, ahead of John Carlos and just behind Tommie Smith. But what happened next would matter far more than any medal. Smith and Carlos told Norman their plan, to raise black-gloved fists in protest of racial injustice. Norman didn't hesitate. "I'll stand with you," he said. He borrowed an Olympic Project for Human Rights badge and wore it on the podium. One silent gesture. 3 men. One of the most iconic protests in modern history. The world saw defiance. Peter Norman saw dignity. Back home, Peter Norman wasn't hailed a hero. He was vilified. Australia, gripped by its own racial insecurities, turned its back. He was not selected for the 1972 Olympics, despite qualifying multiple times. He was never invited to coach, commentate, or even attend official Olympic events. He was told to apologize, to condemn Smith and Carlos, to walk it back. He never did. For decades, Peter Norman lived in quiet exile, working odd jobs, injured, struggling. He remained proud of what he'd done and paid the price in silence. Peter Norman died of a heart attack in 2006 at just 63 years old. At his funeral, 2 men walked beside his casket, John Carlos and Tommie Smith, his brothers in solidarity. They called him a hero, their hero. In the years they were celebrated, he was forgotten, but not by them. In 2012, 6 years after his death, Australia's Parliament issued a formal apology to Peter Norman. Too late for a medal, too late for recognition, but not too late to remember. Today we see that photo and ask, who was that white man standing between fists and fury? He was a sprinter, he was an ally. He was a man who chose principle over privilege. He stood in solidarity and stood alone. Peter Norman, the white man in the picture, and a true champion of the land down under.